Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dad Designer podcast. I'm here with a new dad and designer, Stevie Rodger. Stevie, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Can you give the people a little bit of background about who you are, a little bit about your family, and what you do as a designer?
Yeah, sure. I'm an Australian living in the UK. The lead product designer for a legal tech software firm, um, and I've been designing for about 20 years. I worked a lot of my time in advertising, and moved to the UK probably about 5 years ago after living in Paris for 3 years. And yeah, I specialize in product and UX design, getting data and making sure that we building stuff that help the user.
And you became a dad a few months ago, is that right?
Yeah, only like six or 7 months ago. I think the counter is at 6.5 months. Yeah,
Nice, nice.
I'm
Yeah.
very tired. Yeah, yeah. I was talking to a friend this morning, and we were discussing how having 5 hours sleep now is like, oh my god, I had like a whole 5 hours of sleep. This is amazing, and it's just, yeah, it's how far it's come in like 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I can compare sleep and work in similar ways. So like sleep as a new parent, you learn to like operate on minimal sleep. And then like similar at work, as you become more senior, you get pulled into all these meetings and you figure out how to get a lot of work done in like a very short amount of
Yeah,
time.
like I mean, upskilling in like prioritization at the moment is like just off the chain. I'm just like everything's like, all right, I've got three things to do today. I've got half an hour to do this, and like it's just yeah, I've
Yeah.
just ability to learn at the moment is incredible.
Yeah. It's funny the comparison. I don't think I put the two together until just now, which is fun. Cool. Yeah. So you're a UX product designer. You said you worked in the agency world. So did you come up through marketing design or brand design and then get into it, or what was your kind of design story?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like I started out in fashion just because I really like drawing. I just really like doodling as a kid. I started, any bit of paper that I had in the house, I would be covered in pencils. And fashion just kind of made sense. I started out designing like, ironically, kids board shorts, which is coming to kids surfwear and stuff, which is coming top of mind again now. And then I moved to a company and I got made redundant shortly afterwards, and I just really wanted to draw more, so I started getting into storyboarding, which is like the bit between the script and shooting of film, and so advertising like TV commercials and stuff, which is really exciting, which kind of like helps build from like a thought process into an actual final product. And then I worked on a particular product design. Like we're talking about an onboarding session. I was hired to kind of draw out the onboarding session, and I got kind of a little bit involved in the actual product of like how it works, and I kind of really liked it. And I've always kind of really been a tech geek. I just any new technology or anything, I'm just like, oh god, how does it work, or how do I get into it? And so, kind of breaking that whole piece apart, started really leaning a lot more into product design. And because I've been working in advertising, I just kind of lent that way. Freelanced. This is when I was living in Australia. Kind of crossed both worlds between drawing and product design, all the way through from living in Australia, living in Paris until I moved to the UK just a couple of years ago. And then
Nice.
I was freelance that whole time, and then I kind of wanted just to chill for a little while, and I'm like, I just want to get a full time job and stop like juggling so much for a little
Yeah.
while. And I got a job like 3 weeks before the pandemic, and just kind of just sat that out and just like, okay, I'm good. I need to sit for a bit, and so yeah, I've been there. So 4 years later,
Wow. Nice.
yeah, 4 years
Nice.
later.
Yeah, we were before we hit record. We're recording in a piece of tech called Riverside, and you had you mentioned you never used it before, and we tried to use the chat function, and we were nerding out on the UX of where this lives and like how to find it.
Yeah, like I think any new product that I pick up now, is just like, oh, how have they done this? Like, I just started a subscription to Mob and Design, who like do all of that, and so um, just looking at onboarding flows and how other people do it and how to, how the interaction works and where to find it. It took me a minute to find it, and yeah, I mean, any new toy, any new tool, it's just immediately, you know, to the back of my brain, like, oh, they did that. Okay, cool. Log that or quickly write a note or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And so you've spent a majority of your career without kids, and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
and now
yeah.
you have a young one. How has that impacted your work, other than the sleep factor? And yeah, talk a little bit about that.
I think I always what kind of I mean I turned 40 probably 2 weeks just before I had my kid, little Tommy, and so like most of my life I'm like, no, I got to get my career. Like it's always been about career. It's always been about career. Like trying to push it, and like one of the biggest reasons why I moved out of Australia was because I wanted to get out of a small pond and into like Europe and like bigger markets and make a footprint. And I think kind of having a kid kind of turned it all on its head, because it's just like it's always been about me and my career. Now it's just like, oh, family. No, how do I simultaneously do the best for little one, but like kind of have the career? So in a weird way, I think it's kind of made me prioritize work a lot more efficiently and effectively. But I'm also just enjoying like just hanging, like it's taken made me take a step back and kind of enjoy the smaller things. So like I'm a lot more grateful, and there's a lot of gratitude of like every little thing. Like if Tommy smiles at me in the morning, I'm like, yes, it's a good day, this is amazing. To when I'm at work, I'm like, okay, I've got 8 hours, I've really got to like make this count. Like my partner's at home for 8 hours with screaming kids. I can't run over this deadline. I've got 8 hours to get all this shit done. So I've kind of like, I mean, I'm only 6 or 7 months into it, so it's still a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
But it's I'd say the two things I'm taking out of it is gratitude and prioritization of just like, if I get a task on my desk, I'm like, that is not important. Just it's not happening today. Like I think, yeah, I got really good at what's it called? The quadrant. Who's the prime minister, president, the U.S.
Oh
president
yeah,
who,
Eisenhower. I
yeah,
think
the
it's
Eisenhower
Eisenhower.
matrix.
Yeah.
I picked up on that real quick. I was like, all right, piss that off. Like, get rid of that. I don't need that. And like, yeah, so yeah, prioritization and gratitude of like when I've got time with the kid, it's time with the kid. When I've got work, it's work.
Yeah. And are you working from home, or do you go into an office?
I live in central London. I only live like 10 minute cycle away from the office. Um, so I do like to go into the office a lot, or just at least not be at home.
Yeah.
Um, some days if it's like a quieter day, I've got like 2 or 3 meetings and I don't really have much work on, I'll stay at home just to support my partner. But mostly I'll go into the office, so I've got that clear division of work and space. I don't really like, if I'm with Tommy, I'd rather be with Tommy. If I'm at work, I'd rather be at work rather than half-assing two things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry for
Totally.
swear, kind of swear. I don't know if I'm allowed to
You're
swear.
fine.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. I feel similarly. Like when I shifted to work from home, everyone's a lot of people want to do this, and there's like this big push to like you know go fully remote and all that kind of stuff. But I think the hardest part for me has been like hearing my kids in the house and wanting to go either see what's going on, or play with them, or if I hear them crying, like what's the deal, help out. Not that my wife can't handle it, but it's just like this draw, this pull. And it's not so much about them like walking in my office door and like interrupting me. It's more of like I want to go out and be with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear Tommy crying at the moment in the background. I was like, oh, damn, I want to help. But I get that. Like, I think that's, uh, I think generationally, I don't know what your parents were like. I remember when Tommy was born, uh, I called my dad back in Australia. I'm like, okay, Dad, all right, Tommy's been everything's good. That part is done. I need some advice, and he's like, I don't know. I just gave you to Mum, and that was it. I was like, that's the advice you're giving, just like palm me off. But I think generationally, I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but it was like 3% of the parent, 3% of parent dads changed nappies like 40 years ago to like 70% now. Like the that huge shift between like dad's getting a lot more involved, and especially for me, I kind of I want to be involved. I want to kind of like you uh that piece of gratitude was like, okay, cool, like I can hear my partner like struggling, I want to help out. I'm just like, well, that's um I I kind of want to be there, and I want to be part of the journey. I don't want to miss out because I had a meeting or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel like a shift. It's come up a couple of times in these conversations about it. Um, I've noticed it too. There's just like more dads like being there. I don't think dad designer would have been a thing. Or like we would I think we connected via threads because you were like, I'm a new dad and a designer, like who else is out there? And like
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been a message that you sent out into the world, 20 years ago.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I was, I tweeted out, I can't remember what I was talking about, something else. And I think I tweeted out for a mentor. I was like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor, like somebody like more senior. And like a bunch of people like who had in their bio like dad or new dad or whatever. I was like, there's a lot of dads out here. And then I think that's how it connected. And I was like, it's kind of really nice to, it's really nice to know that I'm not alone. Like that, there's other dads out there, just like juggling being a designer and being a dad and helping out. But I mean, I think back to my dad's generation, that just would not have been a thing. Like there wouldn't
Yeah.
have even been a question. It's just like, oh, you just get your partner to do that. What are you talking about? It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that was really refreshing to see on the threads. Everybody reply back and just be super super welcoming. It was just like, hey, you're a new dad, come on in, like join. And it was just like, yeah, it was really nice. It was a really nice moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as like your work has gone, I mean, obviously it hasn't been too long that
Mm,
you've been a dad, but have you noticed ways in which, other than prioritization and things like that, have you
mm.
noticed ways in which your son has impacted the way you've approached specific projects? UX is probably a little different because kids
Yeah,
are super involved in UX projects where they might like maybe it's the drawings that you've done or different things like that.
I think the so one thing like we talked before, you're based in the US, I'm based in the UK, and I was very fortunate enough, and I like this is such a luxury for me to have, but my partner and I, we have like the way that it works is you give or take, you have a year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Most people take, and I got my partner sacrificed 3 months of her time to give to me, and my work very luckily had 2 weeks statutory leave and then additionally 4 weeks statutory leave. So I had 6 weeks plus 3 months. So in total, I had 4.5 months that
Nice.
I got to spend with Tommy before I had to go back to work. Um, which is a huge luxury. Like that's something not like even in the UK, not many people have had, which is huge. Um, so I got to really spend a lot of time with like Tommy and see how he picked up stuff. And for me, the way that that's kind of like bringing it back to your question, how does impacted the way I design or like what I do with my designs? I think it's kind of a lot more. It's changed a lot more in the way that I approach problems because I I mean, your kids are a bit older, but I don't know if you remember, like way back when you realize they start with nothing. Like there's like I can lie down. That's all I can do. And it's like, and then in a couple of days, it's like, okay, I can see you now. And then it's like, you slowly adopt these new things. So it's kind of it's this realization of especially for UX and product. It's like this appreciation that we always get told we're not the user. It's an appreciation that not everybody sees it the same way that you do, and that just really reinforced that. It's like, and especially this big thing. So I'm kind of rolling with this question a lot, but one of the focuses that we do a lot is because I work in the legal sector, and part of that is a lot large government contracts. So we had to be really careful with accessibility and making sure that things that things that reach a certain standard. And I've read, actually, I've got it right here. I read it. While I had 4.5 months off. I read a lot of books, but like Mismatch by Kat Holmes. She worked for Microsoft, and she's like kind of the. It's a really good book, but it talks about accessibility and how you can kind of look at these things. But then having a baby and like seeing how they can't do things, and you've got to kind of pick that up, it just kind of really reinforce that kind of messages. Like you've really got to kind of think of a different perspective on a lot of things. Like, maybe they can't do this, or maybe they can't do that. Um, and indirectly to your question, baby apps, like,
Mm,
3 a.m. in the morning, you're tired, you've got to swap from like, oh, he woke up, cancel the login, sleep. Okay, he's, you know, breastfeeding on the left breast. Okay, cool. Like log in. Okay, I've got to stop that. Like just those little things. Like how do you get from lock screen when you're dog tired? You're trying to juggle a baby, and it's like, there's a whole lot of user workflows that don't go into that you can't capture on a screen, or you can't capture on like, you know just peripheral ways of working that impact that core red root. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's been huge, and I've been back at work for 2 months, but still the way that I work is a lot more fundamental now,
Mm,
which I think I did a lot more in my head before, but now I'm kind of putting down.
yeah.
But
Do you ever? I mean, it would be wild. Let's say you're working on a baby app, but you're not a dad.
no,
This is a different
right,
world.
yeah.
Uh, do you think designers should put themselves in the scenarios that like a dad would be in? So deprive themselves of sleep and then try to use the app that they're designing.
I think, yeah, like it's kind of like doing something. How would you do something if you're blind? And there's plugins and stuff that you can do that will
Oh
wipe your
yeah, yeah.
screen, so you've got to try. So I think it's always helpful to do it that way. I wouldn't recommend anybody do it for fun because it's not fun. Um, but it's definitely and yeah, I think anybody should kind of try and put themselves in the way the user would
Yeah.
think would work.
Yeah. Yeah, those tools are really helpful to get a better understanding. I know some like color accessibility tools where I've like switched over to that, and I'm like, I was shocked because like I don't have that disability, and so it's like, oh wow, this completely changes my perspective on the experience that other people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really cool. That's cool.
What
Um,
When you've done
yeah.
that, has that changed your like? Was that a learning curve when you like when? So you're saying you work on brand and marketing. Like, does that impact the way that you work? Like learning about accessibility and.
Yeah, I it's still like in it's still frustrating because it feels like this extra step, you know?
Yeah.
And it's such a terrible thing to think and say because it's like it's not my lived experience, and so like I have this privilege to just ignore it and be like, okay, well, it works for me and everyone else in my house. So, it works for
Yeah.
everyone. Um and so I still haven't gotten over that frustration. I was recently working on a project where um we it was an annual report, and obviously the print version is one thing, but when it becomes the digital version that you can download on the computer, we truly had to go through and update all the hex codes to increase accessibility, text over colors and text over images and all that kind of stuff. And just it takes a lot of extra time and effort to do that, but for the benefit, adding alt text to all the images and all that kind of stuff, it's like but especially for that client and that audience, it will make a huge difference. And so
Yeah.
it's like that's what gets me through the tedium of doing the work is like, okay, but I'm actually helping people. But yeah, I still have frustration around it, which is probably a me problem.
I think that's like it's interesting that I guess because of my situation and just having a kid, it's freshly for me. But I think it's something that's coming more of a conversation like in terms of accessibility and stuff. Like there's a great book. I just had it up on screen. Invisible Women, which is like how it explains how a lot. I don't know if you've heard of it. How a lot
Mm-mm.
of tests and data is calculated from the average man, and
Mm,
so like they don't consider women at all. Like so, seatbelts the way that they're designed is designed without women in mind at all. Like it's and
sure.
there's a whole lot. Like it's a great book. Sorry, I'm just shouting out all these books. But then yeah, like I think it's an interesting topic, especially as like with new toys and stuff like that. I mean, we're trying to do stuff with like baby led weaning, like the best way to learn. So you're kind of like, oh, you're introducing colors and you're introducing like high contrast shapes, and so there's like a whole lot of ways that people are thinking, and like it's much different. So like we're looking at nurseries now, and we're like, oh, okay, well, what about Montessori? Like, how do they learn and
Mm,
how do they teach? And so yeah, I mean, it's a whole topic that you get lost in. I mean,
yeah.
we've got lost in it already, but yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't stop. I mean, we have our girls in private school right now, and I became aware of this school that started in Texas called the Anton School, Anton,
Mhm.
and it's a lot more student led learning,
Mhm.
where there aren't teachers in the room. There are more guides, and the guides aren't there to answer questions. The kids are there to like kind of set their own boundaries and to figure things out. And I found that there's an Anton school like in our area, so like you can kind of franchise or like start your own.
Yeah.
And I've really been wanting to check it out because I just think that it's such a different way of learning. Like in the
Yeah.
US, there is a school ideal, and this is what school is. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's like private, there's public, there's homeschool, but this like really flips it on its head to say like, does learning have to look like the
Yeah.
thing that actually is predominantly made for working parents to take care of kids for a large chunk of their day? Uh,
Yeah.
you know, and so yeah, the whole Montessori question and all this kind of stuff, like it doesn't end at nursery school. It
Oh,
keeps going.
but I don't know. Like, I mean, I work in a pretty big team. Like, so there's 13 of us in the UK, and there's a couple of juniors in the team who are all like really amazing designers. But there's this like constant question of like, prescribed ways of working versus how creative can you get? Like,
Mm,
especially with kids, it's kind of like, okay, you've got to prescribe a way for them to do it, but you kind of want them to figure it out for themselves. So there's this real weird thing like, how do you help with creativity? And you want your kids to be creative. You want them to be like be able to paint and stuff like that. And then you want them to be able to like go to bed when you want them to go to bed. So it's like, how do you negotiate the two?
yeah,
So yeah, I guess this is just something I'm going to figure out as like, maybe that's some advice that after this you can give me just a list of advice like, okay, this is the what you do for the first 9 to 10 years. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's part parenting too, right? Like we want our kids to follow these steps but also like figure it out. And I think similarly, like there's all these books, there's all these podcasts, there's all this advice out there, but at the same
Mhm.
time there's different lived experiences. And so there's I think we're still going through that as first time dads of like,
Yeah.
okay, nobody wrote the book on how do I deal with the kid that has two uniform skirts and neither one fit well today but they fit well yesterday.
Oh no. I haven't even thought about uniforms. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you think that a uniform like solves the problem, right? Everyone's wearing the same thing, but like it doesn't. It doesn't. It just creates new problems.
So what you're saying is it just doesn't get easier anytime soon.
I will say that the joys of parenting far outweigh the struggles of the day to day things that will
Yeah.
come up that you can't even make fun of, or you
Yeah.
can't even like picture in your brain.
So somebody said to me just when Tommy was born, is like the hours are long, but the years fly by. And
Yeah,
it's just like, okay, that I think it's days are long, but the years are short or something. But like, I mean, it's been 6 months already. I'm just like, how did that happen? Like, you were tiny when I, now he's just, moving. He started in a crawl, and I'm just like, oh shit! As soon as he starts to crawl, baby proofing the house is a whole other thing. And it's just, I mean, we've got so much shit to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
prioritization. Come on, where's that Eisenhower matrix?
Yeah. And I mean that like that is parenting through and through. Like don't worry about the problem that's going to happen like when he's a teenager. Worry about like the thing right in front of you now. And
Yeah,
obviously prep, you know, try to to get him to be self-sufficient by the time he's 18, but
yeah, yeah,
uh yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. What has been like your biggest what do you feel like is your biggest struggle right now in parenting? I often ask fail or struggle, but like
Um,
you've kept him alive for 7 months, so that's good.
yeah. I think for me probably the biggest thing at the moment is like there's no feedback. Like he doesn't know what's wrong. He's just like I'm in pain. So I'm like I'm just like Calpol. Can I give you Calpol? I don't know if it's the same thing in the US, but it's like does this medication fix you or like like is it too much medication? So all I know is you've been crying for 4 hours. Um, so it's kind of like the you're crying. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Is something wrong? Kind of like there's a checklist and just trying to make sure he's comfortable is the biggest thing. Like, I mean,
Mm,
even the sleepless nights, fine. Like, that's gonna come and go. I'm fine with that. I want him to be comfortable, but on the like, I guess that's the other problem is like, you know, you don't want to clear too much of a path with him. Like, I don't want him to feel no like pain or anything because then he's going to be 5, and then something's going to happen, and then it's just like, what the hell is this feeling? Why am I in so much pain? So, how much to do? Like, how much like do I, you know, just a little bit of a friction of like so that's probably the biggest struggle is like negotiating how much to let him suffer, which sounds so masochistic, but like you know just clearing that path of like okay cool this is going to toughen you up or
yeah,
break you one of the two.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest thing. It's like negotiating what is the right thing to do.
yeah. That makes sense. It makes sense. It does it. I'm not very hopeful here because I'm like the problems just change.
Yeah. Uh,
Like I think kids are very similar to users in that they can identify where they can feel the pain, but they can't identify the problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think that's where like expertise comes in from a designer point of view. Like as a user goes, "Oh, I can't find the button." Like, uh, the question you asked me before, like how being a dad has helped me become a better designer. It's my parents' aging that has helped me also become a
Mm,
better. Like trying to navigate a problem with my mum on a phone. She's like, I can't find it. Google isn't telling me the right answer. I was like, you're not on Google. You've just typed it into your phone book. Like it was like something stupid. Like so, it's like trying to figure out like how to solve a problem for my mum, and like similarly to you know, they don't know what the problem is. So you've got to try and negotiate what the problem is, so you can be like, "Oh, it's this. This is the solution."
yeah,
I think. I mean, I that's a good point. Like, even if he can tell me, he's not going to tell me what the problem is. So, like, even with your girls, I imagine they're 9 or 10s. Like, I don't know what the problem is because they haven't experienced it before. So, as a dad, you've got to kind of go, oh, it's okay. You'll feel better in a week or so,
yeah,
or like, if that's a flu or whatever.
yeah. Or here, drink some water, or have this. You know, you're starving, or you're tired, or like those hungry, tired, in pain. Those
Yeah.
three things continue to be issues, but they exhibit themselves in different ways. Like kids throwing a tantrum because it's 1 p.m. and they haven't eaten lunch yet. And the problem in their mind is, oh, I can't find this toy that I'm looking for. But in
Yeah.
reality, it's like, no, you're actually very hungry and the toy is sitting on the floor in front of you. You're just like unaware.
Just like for you, this is actually two questions I want to ask you. So, like for you, for me, when I'm designing, I get completely lost in designing. Like I'm just like in the tunnel in the screen, going, just like I'm in the flow, and I'm just like just really hammering out, having a great time, listening to some tunes, and just killing it. I completely like some days I'll just forget to have lunch. I'm just like I'm like looking, it's like, oh, it's 4:30. Oh, that's why I'm hungry. I've got to go and eat. Like, does that I mean, do you not do you forget to feed your kids, but like, does that kind of like if you're working and you're kind of like, okay, I got a break for lunch, and you're in the flow, like interruption of your flow, does that? has that helped you or hurt you as being a parent, like kind of, and a designer, like fit both sides?
Um,
I guess like navigating routine as a designer and as a
yeah, I really realized that I like routine coming off the summer.
mm,
Um, because I'm freelance now, because I'm um, can work from anywhere. Um, in once the summer hits and the girls are home or like home for longer, my morning routine is shot, and so I didn't get started working till 9:30 in the morning on throughout the summer.
yeah,
And my best, most creative ideas come in that 8 a.m. to 11:30, 12 p.m. block.
gotcha.
And so then now that we're entering the fall, the girls are back in school. A couple days a week I'm dropping them off, and so we're out the door by 7:30. They're dropped off, and I'm sitting at my desk by 8. Um,
Amazing.
which that hour and a half comparison between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. is a huge difference.
Right.
The amount I'm able to get done in like that amount of time is massive, and then I can come home at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and they're done school, and like I'm more there, and so yeah, routine is huge, huge for me. I don't typically eat breakfast, and so by the time lunch is there, I'm like starving.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
So I think before Tommy, I used to go to the gym, so I'd like wake up like 6, go to the gym, and get to work and like have breakfast in between that time. And so like 9 a.m., I've got like my list of things to do. I'm prepped for them. Like I'm in stand up. Whereas now, like, because I'm not like at the moment, the gym is like the last thing from my mind is just trying to like negotiate. I say negotiate a lot. Just trying to find the time and hang with Tommy. So my routine is broken a lot. So I'm still trying to find it, and especially now that I'm only just coming back to work after two
Hmm.
months. Oh, for 2 months. I'm still kind of because I realize like the more I find like think about it, having a routine as a creative is so important. And like I mean, those little things, the more things that I can have in my life that is like structured and set, then then it makes it so much easier. There's a book by Belsky, the dude from Adobe or
Hmm.
Behance,
Scott, yeah.
that I read ages ago, and he said it's like he interviewed like he wrote down a lot of like tactics on how to get your day started, and he'd leave it, or was it him? I can't remember. I should probably check this, but somebody was saying that they leave their desk at the end of the day with a notebook open with a scribble on it, so it's not a blank page, and they don't come back the next day to a blank page, like it's
Yeah.
already ruined, so they can just you know they can start fresh, but it's like kind of already in that routine and it's already set up for them, so they don't have this like blank page problem. And I think the blank page problem is a greater piece about routine and designers, is that you want to have that structure, so you don't have a blank page, you know where you can pick up and pick off, and you know where to be creative, but you don't want to think about like, oh, what am I going to wear today. It's just like, oh, it's black t-shirt, great, cool, like straight in there and just working.
Yeah. And
um
if you're not watching the video, we both have black t-shirts on.
yeah, yeah, completely, yeah. um the second part of that question is like, this is probably a little bit deeper, but as a parent, sleepless nights, and probably I don't know about later on, like 7 and 10, I think you said.
Mhm.
Um, mental health of being sleepless, having a full time job, trying to be creative, trying to push career forward. I mean, I'm definitely struggling with that. Like when I was away for 4 months and I wasn't working, I was like, oh, my career is my career. Am I coming back to a career, or is it just shot now? Like, is this just kind of. And I mean, I think creative people, I don't know if your experience with your circle of friends, like creative people and mental health is, I find, because we're a lot more sensitive, or we seem to be a little bit like struggle a little bit more, like kind of trying to find, which is why I like the routine of a gym and having all of that. How have you managed to negotiate your mental health and maintaining like a family and career and work?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've realized for me, my mental health is very connected to physical movement. Um, and so I'm not the fittest person by any means, but there have been days and times where my wife will say to me, "Hey, when's the last time you were on the bike?" Because she can tell that my stress level, my sensitivity level, my mood is all like shot.
Yeah.
And I can also see that with like Apple Watch like steps days, or if there's a couple days in a row, or if there's a day where there's like 1,000 steps, it's
Mhm.
very indicative that like my mental health is going to be tanking soon, because the
Yeah.
physicality of just getting up, walking, doing something, even if it's like 20 minutes on the stationary bike, like makes a massive difference on in the mental health.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been making sure to prioritize some sort of movement at a regular interval, and realize that like it's no longer about gains. It's about like I'm getting on this thing for like for the sake of myself and my family.
Yeah.
So that I'm a nicer dad, so that I'm a better designer, so that yeah, there's like all obviously all the health benefits too, but it's like
Mm.
it's become more about mental.
Yeah. I think like that was one of the biggest sells for me to get an Apple Watch. Was I don't have one on at the moment, but the fact that it just said time to stand up.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I was in that flow. I'd be like, oh, it's 5 p.m. Like, I forget to stand up. I forget
Yep.
to, like, it's nice to have that kind of like. And I think now I've really been getting into like the journaling app. Like, how am I feeling today? And I can see, like, oh, I haven't worked out or I haven't, like, walked or, so yeah, I think that's one big thing is like health and making sure I walk around and move some part of my body just to kind of like get that flow moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure it's good too. Like you mentioned that you're a 10-minute bike ride from the office. Like
Yeah.
it's helpful probably to have that like ride in, ride back, where you're like not just sedentary, you have a little bit of time to
I
at least
think
move.
like so I live in central London, and so like everything we walk, like I don't, well, we do have a car, but it's my partner's mom's car. Um, we walk everywhere, like public transport everywhere,
Yeah.
um, and like go for a walk to the coffee shop or something like. So it's it's always walking, and even I do sometimes right. Generally, if I'm like 10 minutes out from the like, if it's 8:50 and I'm like I've got to get to work in 10 minutes, I generally ride. But otherwise, I'll just walk because it's a nice walk. Although in London it does rain a lot, it's miserable a lot. So uh, just that ability to walk is just a huge thing, like a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Cool. Well, this has been a good conversation. We've talked about a lot. We're I try to keep these around 30 minutes and we're already past that. So,
Sure.
um before we go, if people want to find you, follow you, where's the best place to do that?
Everything is at Stevie Rodger,
Okay.
StevieRodger. It's not quite the same as Captain America, Stephen Rogers. It's close, but not that close. Um, but yeah, Stevie Rodger everywhere.
Nice.
I'll post. I'm trying to post a lot more and just be, share designs I'm working on, or I'm a big process kind of like I'll write like everything that we said that we were talking before, saying wireframes and stuff, or how do you. I think as a UX designer, writing like building that stuff, I kind of that's where I spend most of my time is working out how to build process and patterns from that. So
Nice.
I'll share stuff and what I'm reading at the moment. Books
Yeah.
are huge. So
Yeah. You had
yeah,
some good
follow.
book recommendations throughout. So I'll
Yeah,
make sure to try to link those
yeah,
in the show notes when I figure out how to do that. All right, Stevie, it was great meeting you. Great having you on.
yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Amazing. Thanks, Michael.